we're excited to talk about something that is going to be really impactful for credit unions and other marketing trends that we've seen. Um, Feel free. The webinar chat is open. If you have any questions, you can direct those to us as your panelist, or if you want to chat amongst each other, feel free. We'll be keeping an eye on it. All right. So in general, we're going to do a little introduction. Hello, my name is Misty Waldrop. I'm here with Growth by Design. We are a part of the League of Credit Union and Affiliates family. We are with Growth by Design, and I've been with Growth by Design for several years now. And introducing now, fantastic Allie. Allie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Allie, obviously. I'm also with Growth by Design. I'm a brand new Growth by Design baby. I've been here for about 2 months now. My experience is strongly in core branding, so visual brand and brand messaging. So we'll be touching a little bit on that today as well. But yeah, I'm excited to have joined the team, dive more into credit union marketing. It's been really fascinating so far. I'm having a lot of fun with it. So excited to be hosting this webinar today with Misty, and hopefully you guys get some really good information out of it.
So this is where we're going to start. Sometimes we have to backpedal a little bit to kind of see the view in its entirety. Our credit union space, we're navigating a lot of really quick evolving changes. Um, we are, excuse me, we're seeing the way that consumers are receiving information change. There are a lot of different journeys that the member can take. And so the overall goal for this is for us to take a holistic approach, maybe step back and see the whole forest as opposed to just standing in front of one tree. Um, Overall, the way our members are receiving this information is changing. Traditionally, the rule of seven was a long-standing marketing principle that often we used as a rule of thumb. And if you haven't heard of the marketing rule of seven, the basic concept is that your consumer would need to see your brand, your name represented at least 7 times before you had buy-in from your consumer. That means meeting them on multiple touch points. I almost would challenge that. I do believe it's true, but I would almost challenge it. And so I reference Wally a lot. It reminds me of, by and large, I mean, consumers are getting inundated with ads constantly, chronically. And so what does that mean for your credit union? Because when you put your credit union budget up against another financial institution, they've caught up, right? They understand that times have changed and we can't compete with a Bank of America budget. So how are we going to stand out in our space? Overall, the bank marketing over the last several years, maybe you've seen it or heard of it. Uh, the way that it's evolved is I think there was maybe a little bit of jealousy in there. So they're investing in their staff and they have that staff buy-in of creating a really beautiful experience for their customers. So we're seeing where they're investing more in their staff, and so they are getting that word of mouth. A huge portion of this also onboarding in your client journey is faster. So every facet in which a member interacts with your credit union as compared to a bank, we just need to make sure we're streamlining things and we're keeping things on track. So within this, I don't know, has anybody opened, I dare even say the B word, a bank account recently? I feel free to share your experience. I decided not too long ago that I was going to open up my first bank account outside of the credit union space. And I wanted to look for a high yield savings account. Like that was my goal. My goal was savings, and I like the high yield opportunities that they had with some of the online banks. So when I created that journey for myself, I was able to open an account and fill out all of the information within minutes. I had my routing and account number, and I had my entire follow-up process. And when I went through that, I kind of sat back and I said, wait a second. Are my credit unions able to do this at the same time? Yes, we have the personal touch, but how do we create that longevity? I think the biggest part of that, Allie, I'm going to hand it over to you now,
Okay.
is creating that strong brand. So, Allie, you go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, so obviously we have some really good marketing strategies to go through with you guys today, a few of which are trending. So we're going to hit on those trends as well. But before we dive into all of those technicalities, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the foundation of a strong brand first and how important that is. So first, I just want to go over, your visual brand, your messaging, and your tone and what that should look like. So, a strong brand and powerful messaging, it should signal professionalism and credibility. So, think about when you're driving down the road, you see a business or a billboard, you're noticing their logo, you're noticing how their location communicates, their signage. And even when you see a commercial, what are they communicating through that? And it's going to affect how you view them and how credible you see them as based on what that looks like, right? So if the logo is not great, automatically, psychologically, you're kind of bringing them down a few notches from being like a powerful pillar in whatever market they're in. So that professionalism and credibility is very important. It also communicates value with and without words, right? So with the messaging, you're communicating that value with words, with the visual brand without, but either way, you're showing that value, that professionalism, that credibility. You're also creating emotional connection. So there's so many things within visual brand that can even sort of create this emotional connection. There are things with colors, that psychologically will connect you more to your members. There are things within the visual with the logo type with the typeface, things that communicate your brand really strongly and are going to raise that credibility. It also differentiates you from competitors, so you don't want to look like every other credit union. You want to really channel what your differentiator is, and you want a visual brand and messaging that's going to support that and differentiate you from everyone else and differentiate you from banks as well. And then also, you'll see this, we'll talk about this a lot today, consistency. So this builds trust through consistency. If your visual brand is used correctly over and over again, if it's really strong, if your messaging is used correctly and it's really strong, it's going to build that trust through your membership and your potential members seeing that over and over again. Next, I'm going to go into building that messaging a little bit. So we talked about why it's so important, but okay, how do you do that? How do you take that information and make those next steps? So the first thing that I mentioned a little bit before is assessing your differentiator. So what makes you different from other credit unions? What makes you different from banks? What is the one thing? What is your main focus that sets you apart? And then also assessing your goals. So, and these messaging components, you're not going to be revising them every few months, every 6 months. Campaign messaging can come and go, but this core messaging you really want to hold on to for the long haul. So these goals that you're assessing are going to be those really long-term goals. What does your credit union look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What do you want to be achieving? And so with that information, you can develop, if you don't have these components already, or revise the current ones that you have. And we'll give a little more information, definitions on these components in the white paper, but just to lightly touch on them. Mission, vision, we know and love those. Most of us have those, but you just want to make sure that they really speak to who you are as a credit union. Your promise, a little bit different from a slogan. Again, slogans can come and go, but your promise is like, at your core, what are you promising to your members? What are you promising to deliver, to achieve? What are you promising and the experience that you're delivering to them? Tone is a fun one because every brand is essentially a personality, right? So your credit union in and of itself is a personality, and you want that tone of voice coming from that personality to be consistent, to really speak to who you are. This one can be a little bit less straightforward. So just to give you a little tidbit here, again, more in the white paper, but to develop tone, you can really just look at keywords, right? Like you're communicative, you're warm, you're friendly, you're proactive, you're innovative, things like that that you can build on. Just make sure that they're not too generic and they really are true to you, but they can develop that personality, and then everything that you're speaking to, right? So your email communications, your social media, absolutely everything can kind of come from that personality. And again, that's creating consistency. Position, this one is just how you're positioning yourself in the market. Again, it really plays off of your differentiator. It uses some of these other messaging components, but it's really the who, what, when, where, why of who you are as a credit union. And then core values. This one might seem a little bit like an outlier, but if your team isn't supporting the same values within your credit union, your members are going to feel that. They're going to come in and feel the disjointedness. They're going to see that, they're going to feel it, they're going to know, that consistency within your team isn't there. So that's also a very crucial component. Okay, and then one more thing on brand, and then I promise we'll move on. Refreshing your visual brand. So I like to look at visual brand after messaging just because so much can be used from your messaging for your visual brand. You can use your messaging as inspiration. So depending on what your tone is, what your goals are, the core of what you created there, that can really feed into what colors you use, what shapes you use, what do you want it to communicate? Obviously, you want to also assess your community partners and your competitors, banks around you, where are your members leaving and going, where are they coming from? And that's assessing brands around you that you like and don't like, just to develop, kind of what direction you want to go in. And then you can create a mood board from there. And whether you're using a marketing agency to flush this out or not, this is a really strong place to start because, an agency wants to also create what speaks to you. They want to create what you're looking for. So creating that mood board can be really beneficial for both parties. And you need to make sure that it works across multiple channels and layouts. So there's so many different iterations, layouts of a logo that you may need depending on where it's going, social media, email, a billboard, print pieces, and then obviously also file types with that. There's a lot that you need there. Having a guide on how to use the visual and having a guide on how to use messaging as well, both very important. So you can communicate those items to your team and make sure that they know how to use everything properly. And then you can roll it out at your own speed. Last but not least, this is very important. A lot of people feel overwhelmed. How do I roll out a revised brand when I already have all these other promo items, print pieces that I've invested money in, and it's going to be a lot to just wake up one morning and do a switch up. But there's no rush. You can roll it out at your own speed, replace materials when you can, as you can, and eventually you'll have this all-encompassing new brand that you can tout and be proud of.
So now we're going to touch on just a few trends that we're seeing. Often we are working with our credit unions directly to ensure that they're getting their messaging out across multiple platforms. And if you've been in the credit union marketing space, you might almost throw up both hands and say, direct mail, Misty, are you kidding me? But once something that was a burden, just another piece of paper in the mailbox, because of the typical expense, it kind of went away when digital started picking back up. But now what we're seeing a resurgence of direct mail. And so, Allie, if we could go to the next screen, please, ma'am. So, so something that we're seeing is, well, direct mail is very expensive and it doesn't make sense, right? I don't know how to get the list. I don't know how to supply that at a local credit union. How do I get that benefit of direct mail without the cost associated with it? One of the most common things that we have seen recently is the every door direct mail. So you get the benefit of direct mail, but you can mitigate the cost that's associated with postage. Direct mail historically has always, had fantastic returns. It's almost like updating your kitchen, like you're going to get that cost back. And so, as an example here, I pinned one of our local credit unions and I went out within a 5 mile radius. So, almost 5,000 pieces of mail that can go out for less than $1,500 for the cost that's associated with the post office. Of course, you also have to anticipate that there could be some printing cost. And then there's a certain way you have to bundle it. So it's a little bit more legwork. You have to manually go and drop it off at your local post office, but then you get to experience direct mail. And I don't know if you've seen these when they've arrived to you. Most often I've been getting them as real estate ads, but it'll have, now I'm looking for them always. So now when you go to your mailbox, look at the postage on the back and you'll see that it says EDDM. And It's kind of interesting to see, but it's also a great way for you to connect with your locals and be able to provide some information about your credit union in a really easy to digest format. So,
Perfect. So,
go
oh, okay.
ahead, Allie.
So yeah, next we're rolling into networking. And again, between the direct mail and the networking, I'm sure everybody here is thinking, you guys, this is not modern. But I just want to reiterate, between the direct mail and the networking, these are things that were in style, went out of style, and you know how things like to circle back and come back in style again. So these are two things that we've noticed. It's not just it's covering your bases. So if you're not doing it, another credit union, another bank, another institution in your community will be doing it. But it's also, yeah, I mean, people love to have those touch pieces now. They love to have that in person. We all experienced COVID. It wasn't fun. We couldn't hang out together. And now it's something that's kind of circling back around again. It's a very important touch point. So in-person networking, Misty, I'll cover this one and then you can jump in on the next slide if that works.
ahead.
So for in-person networking, again, the big unplug is happening with younger consumers. So, there's this need to come back together and network in person. I know locally here in Augusta, we have a young professionals, which I'm sure that they have that in a lot of cities, but ours is very active. They love getting together, hanging out, networking, and talking about bigger issues, community issues. So I think this is just something that we're seeing an uptick in, and it's very important to make sure that your credit union is involved in this. It builds trust, differentiates from digital, and can gain business insights.
So, how do we have impactful networking? There are ways to connect that we're probably all familiar with. Industry conferences. You've probably been invited to one of, the league's industry conferences, trade shows, expos, hosting member events, holding those lunch and learns. We're seeing a big uptick with the request from those for members being involved in your local chamber. Um, I've always heard, I want you to wear our branded information and be at the front of every picture. So then you have your brand, your logo that you're so proud of, in the front of every paper for a new business that opens locally. You can also host business roundtables where you invite other important industries where you can come together. You can also be your local sponsor, right? Partners in Education is still very big for a lot of credit unions, but also not just planning these networking events, it's important to set goals around these. So, whether that might be, I want to have 5 meaningful conversations and take a moment to look at the business card and actually follow up with those people. Say, I'm going to give myself 48 hours and I'm going to follow up with every person that handled, a business card with. Um, Also, it's great. Credit unions I've seen have hosted after hours events where they invite the local community or local small businesses so they can talk about their product or service, but also have that one-on-one connection. But it's not just putting it into use and I'm going to do this and it's going to happen. It's having that constant participation so you can build that trust within your community. Right. And so, how do we pivot from in person, but also not forget some of the digital presence that's so vital? Um, if we're starting outside of the credit union and we're taking ourselves through the member journey, often our website is something that we also need to include consistent reviewing of. So social media, is something that is still going on. I mean, we often have many clients with social media accounts that we manage. Facebook is being aware that's an aging demographic. Threads is something that has come up. It's growing faster and expected to surpass X by next year. TikTok, short form video, is still very popular. Even if you say that's not for my credit union, at least going in and holding the space. So go ahead and claim your profile, go ahead and set it up, even if you're not consistently posting. Because we don't want to just leave those items open, which also takes us to our Google business profile. Are we consistently looking at our Google profile and saying, okay, let's look at our reviews, let's see how the outside community views us? So not just the Google profile, but other local directories. I'm going to take some time and just set aside time to research what other people view when they're researching for my credit union. So whether it's Google, whether it's Bing, whatever profile you're or search engine you're utilizing, going on to those and look at how you're rating. Is there a good opportunity? Is there some improvement opportunities that we can, look at? Um, and then also we're seeing continued growth among the podcast and video platforms. So oddly enough, long form video is making a resurgence. So yes, short form video is very digestible and it's a great way for people to find information quickly. But as consumers want more information, long form video is slowly making its resurgence. So I would almost anticipate that if you were creating some marketing plans, to go out of your way and say, hey, we're going to focus on some short form videos, but if they want more information, let's make sure that it's readily available on the back end, whether it's YouTube or we have it nested on the website. Keeping that digital presence updated is going to be really vital in the years ahead.
Awesome. I'll dive in. You mentioned social media a little bit. I'll dive into it a bit further just because, I mean, it's a big one. And there's a lot of discussion points around social media and the mysteries of, the algorithm and engagement. Lots of fun there as well. So what I mainly want to note here about social media is the idea of presence versus engagement. So engagement, it might be hard for your credit union to keep up with not just posting, but also figuring out how do I get more likes? How do I get more shares? How do I get more comments on here? Bring members in, and it's all extremely important. But at its base, what I really want to iterate here is like what Misty said, even just owning those social media accounts is going to be a huge step one. And then a step two is still consistently being present and showing up on those platforms, and even just semi regularly posting. And the reason for that is because when people are researching your credit union, coming to your website, looking you up on Google, one of the first things they're going to want to do is go to your social media account. And if they go to that account and there's absolutely no post there, or the last post was from 3 years ago, it's going to kind of diminish your credibility. It's going to kind of set that in their minds, okay, they're not really that present. It kind of knocks you down a few tiers. So just being regularly present on your social media account is already going to be a huge step one there. So there are some things you can do to uptake your engagement, and that's what I'll go into here. But that's just the first point I really wanted to make is just that consistency in posting is going to really help your credibility with people who are coming to check you out. Um, Things that can help with your engagement. The first thing is interacting with community partners and your followers. So not just posting on your social media account, but also being alive on it, commenting, especially on LinkedIn, sharing things from community partners, sharing things, from people that are talking about you, making sure that you're paying attention to what's going on those accounts. And then, posting multiple media types consistently. So, graphics are a huge one, but you also want to mix images in there. So pictures of your team, your membership, events that you're hosting, as well as reels, like Misty noted, short form video content is definitely a big trend. People love to see things in action. Investing funds into important content. So, and you can do this, it doesn't have to cost a lot. You don't have to put a bunch of funds behind it. But if it's something that you really want to push out there far, you can just put a little bit of money behind it for a few days, and it can really, really do some good work there. You want to let your messaging inform your tone, which I touched on earlier. So making sure that everything you post and the way it sounds and the captions are all very consistent. And then also tracking analytics and adjusting your strategy as needed. So especially when you're investing funds behind content, you want to keep an eye on who's interacting with what, and what that looks like so that you can pivot and maneuver as needed, instead of just doing the same thing over and over again if it's not necessarily working.
All right. Additional digital information. Uh, Email campaigns are still hyper relevant. Unlike social media, you get to own the relationship, not the algorithm. You don't have to fight against the parameters of Meta. Email converts at higher rates than any other digital channel for financial services. And members can expect that communication from someone that they trust. It creates that direct line from your credit union to your member inboxes. You can segment emails depending on what platform you're on. There's a lot of segmentation that you can create, and you don't want to become ignored within the inbox. You don't want to feel spammy, but your members still want to hear from you. They want to hear of updates happening or what's relevant at the credit union, or the different journey that they may need to take can all be created depending on the email platform that you use. So we use emails to drive attendance at every member touch point. So whether it's direct mail and you sent something out direct mail, you can send an email. Hey, did you get our postcard? Or redirect traffic back to your website and ultimately try and get those members into the branch if that's your goal. Once they're at the branch, they have already heard of what the tone is like, what their experience, what their anticipated experience is. So also keeping staff aware of what emails are going out. These are almost a marketing memo you can send amongst the staff. But it should be beyond promotion. You lead with your value, include financial tips, market insights, educational content first, so it doesn't just feel like another ad within their inbox. And then finally, just to kind of wrap up the website here, your website is your 24-hour first impression for your members. So if you are closed, they're going to your website for relevant information. And so it needs to be current, it needs to be consistently updated, it needs to be easily searchable, and then built to convert, not just inform. So we want to convert those members as they're going through their journey, that they have the ability to get to a loan application easy. They can get to their online banking easily. Often we forget to update our website, right? Like, oh, we put it on the website, but we forget to update it. A lot of your credit union members are going to judge your credibility by your brand, by your messaging, and what your website looks like. And so, even though they might be on a desktop, most often people are scrolling on their phones. And so, thinking mobile first, think from the small screen first, and ensure that even on the mobile side, that it's easy to get to the information that you're looking for. Just to circle back kind of on this, go ahead and take your Google business profile if you do not have it. And then please, most importantly, don't have your Google business profile tied to one individual. Set up a marketing Google account, even if it's not one that you use as an inbox, because all too often, a staff member might leave and then they hold all the rights to your Get business profile, and going through that appealing process can be quite lengthy and cumbersome. So make sure that your Google business profile not only is claimed, but also make sure that it's at just a neutral party inbox that's easily accessible for your team.
All right, time to talk about AI, the fun little robot. So lots of conversations around AI, obviously, especially as we move into 2026. It just keeps expanding more and more and more. So we definitely want to hit on this big trend happening now and how you can leverage it in marketing specifically. Credit unions are using a lot of AI in operations. There's a lot that could be touched on there. Today, we want to focus on marketing. So here's some areas that you can really utilize AI in and how you can do it well. First and foremost, whatever AI solution you're using, you really want to make sure that you're training it with your messaging and utilizing it to create first drafts of various copies. So, if you were think of it as an additional team member or an additional employee, if you were to bring someone on, you wouldn't ask them to, draft email copy or newsletters to your members without training them first on your messaging, on your tone, on the way that your brand works. And so you want to treat AI the same way. You want to upload these documents, make sure it understands exactly who you are as a credit union. Yeah, and that way it can create quality first drafts for you. And the reason I say first drafts is because it's not a one-stop shop. It's not error-free, unfortunately. So you really still have to put that extra layer of human touch point to it. So after you get that first draft, you want to read it. You want to make sure it matches your messaging. You want to make sure you tweak it further, and you want to make sure that it doesn't sound, like AI. Something else you can utilize, chatbots. That's a big one. And a lot of conversation around it too on a lot of these areas, honestly, because if you add a chatbot to your website, is that taking away from, human interaction? I would argue no, because not everyone is going to use that chatbot. People who want to and who that works best for, they're going to utilize it, and that's going to help you and your team. It's going to streamline things for you. And that chatbot is also going to be able to kind of gain more information on that member through those conversations that can even help with your own insights. People who still want those member touch points, they're still going to get them. You still want to be made available to them. They're still going to be able to call the credit union. So we're not getting rid of that entirely. There are other things you can utilize AI for in terms of member insights. There are a lot of solutions out there that you can tap into. One thing is communication and improving it. So you can even take call transcripts, recordings, and upload things like that into AI, and ask for suggestions on improvements. So customer service improvements, or, we're really trying to push this product right here. Did we, perform this call well? Where could we improve? You can also utilize it for targeted marketing. So it can pull a specific group, that you can use to target, for a specific product. So if you're trying to really push a specific loan, if you have a deal going on for a loan, a promotion, it's going to help you target a specific group. So you're not just sending out a blanket email or communication to all of your members, and potentially bombarding them with information that's not going to serve them. It's not going to serve you. It can also help with retention. So there's a potential of it flagging members, who are likely to leave, so that you can make, personal touch points, contact them, send them correspondence, to help keep them, talk to them about what you can do, what's the next product that they would be interested in. You can also tap AI for strategy, suggestions based on analytics. So if you have data analytics, if you have website analytics, email analytics that you're tapping into, you can run that data through AI and get strategic suggestions there, to kind of help you pivot and figure out what you should do next, in your marketing initiatives. Um, and again, last but not least, remember to have a roadmap and crawl before you walk. Some people can dive into headfirst into AI and it can be very overwhelming. You want to make sure you just understand the basics first. So get into ChatGPT, get into Claude, get into one of these and just start playing around if you haven't already, and kind of learn how it works. Take a few webinars on just specifically AI, not just in marketing, but also in credit union operations, and learn more about it. And then from there, you can dive into deeper into some of these solutions that can really, dig into your member insights.
So we've already touched on so many digital aspects that can create the impression for the member experience. Uh, But also, one of the most vital ones that often is not thought of is the in-person experience. So, the power of the branch visit. Members who visit branches historically have a 3 times higher lifetime value than the digital-only users. So, the in-person interactions, they build that emotional loyalty that the digital can't replicate. So, often with your staff, they could be presented with the opportunity to cross-sell, almost the upsell. So how do we do that? We engage the senses, ensure that our staff is trained and aligned on policies and procedures. This all goes back to your branding. Um, and we will touch on that in just a moment. But the site, what does the member see marketing wise, from the drive-through? If they walk through the front door, what are they seeing from the lobby? Are marketing materials accessible? When they're listening for sound, do they have an opportunity to kind of have that private conversation? Can they overhear staff discussions in the back? Are they receiving those warm greetings at every branch? touch is back to that digital piece. But overall, when you think about engaging the senses, is your branch accessible? Is it easy to get in? Is it convenient? Some of these things are big lifts if you have to make those changes. But if you're just thinking from the marketing perspective, are the marketing materials easy to understand? Are they digestible for your average member? The key takeaway is the totality of the experience for the member. So whether it's digital focused or it's an in-branch experience, it helps create that emotional connection that goes beyond just a transactional banking experience. And so keeping in mind with those sensory moments can really help. Most importantly, it's consistency across the branch. I've had this discussion before with credit unions, and a big point of friction that they experienced is there were some branches of the same credit union did not have a standard experience. So if you went in, I'm just going to use Decatur as an example. If you went into a Decatur branch, it was not expected to fill out a deposit or a withdrawal form. Well, the main office in Atlanta says, excuse me, we have deposit and withdrawal forms for every transaction. We have to have that. And then it almost became a point of conversation because we need to ensure that there's consistency. When the member visits that location, are they getting that same experience? Are they getting, whether it's hand holding or it's self-sufficiency, whatever it is, it just needs to be communicated so they get that same experience. Chick-fil-A is often, or a restaurant, when you go there, you know exactly what your sandwich is going to taste like. You're not going to go into one county over that has triple the pickles, right? Because that particular person that was making your food just really loves pickles. I know when I go to a Chick-fil-A, I know exactly what kind of experience I'm going to receive as a customer. And I also know what it's going to be like, regardless of state or county. So having that unified branding, signage that's consistent, easily identifiable, branch design, is very vital amongst your branches. And some of that can be hard to translate into real action. But how do we do this? You have to have buy-in from your leaders. And then once you have the buy-in and they understand the importance and the value, but because of that brand consistency and member experience, you can spread that not just vertically, but also horizontally amongst the team. So what I would do if I was having to look at these opportunities and say, hey, we need to update some of our marketing. Yes, some of our brochures, but what I want my members to experience is this consistency in branding and experience from the inbox through the front door and out the back. Also, some of these things, as we go through them, even if you have members that leave, even creating a positive closing experience so you know where members are experiencing these frustration points and you have a cohesive experience if they're wanting to close their account.
All right. We're coming to the close. We're at the bottom line here. Misty, do you want to kind of provide a summary of this?
Yeah, absolutely. The bottom line, what we've seen and is impactful in practice is that credit unions win when they're consistent. Historically, credit unions have always been the safety net of their local financial community. And so whether you're at that direct mail piece or you're that digital presence, when your member walks through your branch door, every interaction should feel intentional, welcoming, cohesive, and genuinely focused on what their experience is like. And so when we talked about having the five senses, it isn't just about having pretty wallpaper. You could have the most beautiful branch, but their experience is so negative that they word of mouth, it travels much further. And so it's creating those emotional connections that you truly are there and you can evolve simple transactions into really impactful relationships where they can share that amongst their family and their friends. One of the most impactful things that I experienced when I was working within the credit union space is we had We had a teller, a longtime teller. She was very comfortable where she was at, and certain members would only go to her. And she was their personal banker. So everyone would go to Sharon. That is just what would happen. Well, Sharon had worked there for so long that um, she had a member that she noticed odd transactions starting to come out of her account. And what ended up happening, and I think all too often you will see within the credit union space, you really get to know your members and you can first spot when something goes awry. Well, Sharon had noticed that there were a lot of really strange transactions that were consistently happening off of Mrs. Holcomb's account every month right after she got her Social Security deposit. Um, so she took it to her leadership. She said, "Hey, I'm noticing she's having these big checks written off her account consistently every month. I think something's going on." What they ended up finding out is that her home caretaker was fraudulently writing checks off of the account. But because Mrs. Holcomb she was still there, but you know, she wasn't able to pay attention to her accounts the way she historically did. Um, she didn't realize it was occurring to the tune of $10,000. This local caretaker was able to draft funds out of her account, but because of the quick thinking and the attention to detail and that member experience, ensuring that you know what your members are going through, Sharon was able to kind of stop some pretty significant fraud. And so the credit unions, right? We win when we're consistent. And that's what we want to be. We want every member experience to be positive, and often that reflects within the marketing pieces. So ensuring that we're sharing that message and having those items readily accessible.
Beautiful. Okay. We're going to open it up to any questions that you guys may have. I'll go ahead and let you know we are also developing a white paper that will go out to you along with, the recording of this. You'll have all that data in case you want to discuss it with your team, discuss it with your leadership to kind of implement some of these changes. But yes, does anybody have any questions?
Okay. I do see one that came in to us here. Allie, I'll throw this one at you. Do you think that credit unions need to be on all social media platforms?
Let's see. Short answer, no. Long answer, I think it's all about, again, crawling before you walk and doing what you can. I think Misty had a point that you need to go ahead and claim those accounts on every platform, but you don't necessarily have to be active and posting on every single one. If you're currently not doing any of it, I would say just go with one and get started with that. Right now, like Misty said, Threads is growing, but if you're just getting started out, you can start somewhere like Facebook. That's going to have more of like a mid to upper age reach. Instagram would probably be my next to hit for mid to younger ages, and it's also great for supporting video content. And then LinkedIn is a good one as well. I would say that's probably one of the easiest ones to just tap into. It will help you to connect to local businesses and professionals. So you'll be able to kind of tap into those audiences. But yes, like I said before, kind of on the social media slides when we had that discussion, I would at least be somewhat active on one, whichever one fits most to your target membership.
Okay, and we had one more, and Allie, I'll take this one. So the question was, how do you get staff buy-in on this consistency approach? And and I get it. Often there can sometimes be, it happens, squeaky wheels. That there are things that have been the way they were for a long time, and it's hard to pivot and change. I think that a lot of that has to come from your leadership and answering the why. You have to explain the why so people are like, okay, I get it now. Even though we've always done it this way, ensure that your leadership is informed and engaged. And then it can trickle down from there if they understand the value, the importance, and the why behind that. That's what I would say to that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure. I think too, bringing it up routinely in staff meetings helps keep it top of mind. So yeah, just make sure that the conversation stays lively around it.
Fantastic. Well, I did put our email addresses. If you have any questions, Growth by Design is always here to be a resource for you. We'll be following up with all attendees with a white paper and some additional information. We appreciate you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.